sewing friends. I'm Carol from Marin Public Library, and today on Fiber Fun we will be sewing stockings. With these small stockings, we can use them for gift bags or hang them on the Christmas tree, like this one would be. And what you would need besides, I used 3 coordinating fabrics, and I used ribbon, thread, and if it is a light flimsy fabric like this one is, I would use interfacing, but something like this I would not, because it is got more body and there will be 4 layers. Now for the larger stocking, I use fusible fleece to give it more body, and then you will need 7 inches for the ribbon. Now, you would also need a sewing machine, your iron and ironing board, scissors, and pins. Since we are using those sharper objects, please supervise younger children. Now we're ready to start sewing. Now we're ready to start our stockings. The first thing that you'd want to do is cut out the pattern that you're going to be using. For the mini stockings, I have 3 different sizes. For the large stocking, there's this one, and when you print it, you get 2 pieces of paper and you match the little indicators and you tape it together. I will also have this pattern, which is like a medium-sized pattern. And it's a good pattern for those people who are just beginning to sew, because it's easier to sew just a few curves rather than as many curves as this one. Now the first thing you do to cut out the fabric, you have the 2 pieces and they're laying this way. If you cut out 2 at a time, you're going to be getting them the right way, so that when you open them, both right sides go 2 different ways, and that way they will match when you're ready to sew them. Now your first step would be sewing the cuff onto the stocking. And you want to have the right sides together. And I sew a 1/4 inch seam. And then it is important to iron them. Now on the 2 larger stockings, I have sewn interfacing on them so that they will be a little more stiff. But the little one is harder to turn around if you put the interfacing. Now, you do the same thing if you're making a large stocking. See, the 2 pieces are sewn together with the cup in the middle. The next thing you would do is sew on the handle. You use 7-inch loop for the big stocking and 3-inch loop for the small stockings. Now this, you sew it right above the lining fabric on the cuff. So this is a thinner cotton fabric, so I ironed on interfacing, which the fleece kind of interfacing. Whereas this fabric is going to be made out of a quilted fabric, so there's no need to put on the interfacing. The other thing I want to mention is that this fabric, I used a pre-printed stocking, and I'm going to use that for the inside. But make sure when you cut it out with a little bit of interface, a little bit of seam allowance fabric. Because when you sew it, you do not want to have to sew part of the stocking, but you sew it right on the edge on the red. Now that you got your two different pieces together and they look like this with the two ends pointing the same way, you turn it over so that you can match the right sides together. And I find it easiest to start pinning this together at the seams. So I take and then you would pin it all the way around, except you do need to leave an opening so that you can turn the stocking. And I will leave it open on the lining fabric, and on the big stocking you want to leave it open about 4 inches. So that would be that. And then on the small stocking, leave it open about 2 inches. It's very important once you do get this sewed together, and on the small stocking the seam would be 1/4 inch, and then it would be 1/2 inch on the big stocking. So the seams are all matched, and then you have to clip it on the curves. And I've trimmed the seam a little bit shorter so that it'll be less bulky when you turn it. Once you get this sewed together, you sew it right on the edge where the opening is. And see, this is what it'll look like when you have the pieces all turned. Now we're ready for the final step. I have my chopstick for this. Then I just start pushing this in. And this is where I get my chopstick, or you can use like a pencil, unsharpened pencil. If it's wide enough, you can use a ruler. But you want to get this pushed in so that the inside can hold your treats that you want to put in it. You're all pushed in with your chopstick or your unsharpened pencil or ruler. It will look like this. This one is the very smallest stocking, and I don't think this would be an easy one for a beginning sewer, because sewing the little curves is hard, and even anybody who's sewn a lot has to go very slowly around the curves. Probably the easiest one to start with is this stocking for the beginning sewers. Small ones can hold small gifts or just as decoration around the house, and the large stockings could be made for some special person and hung by the chimney with care, with hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. Now these ones can also be embellished by putting the name of your special person on there or putting a bell on the toe. So next week you can join me for making hand warmers and neck warmers. Until then, goodbye and take care.